Most people cannot answer this one question about quitting their job. Can you? Here it is. What is the exact dollar amount sitting in your bank account the day you would need to walk away from your salary forever? Not a rough guess, not enough to survive. The exact number. Most people go completely blank, and that blank stare is why 94% of people who say they want to quit never do. They don't fail because they lacked courage. They fail because they never made the decision concrete. Everyone told me I was insane when I quit my marketing director job on March 14th, 2022, with $11,400 in savings, no clients, no business plan, and a rent bill due in 19 days. My manager called it financial suicide. My dad stopped picking up my calls for 2 weeks. But here's what actually happens when you burn the boats and bet on yourself. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to see that the conventional wisdom about having a plan before you quit is not just wrong. It might be the very thing keeping you broke and stuck. Here is the myth the entire career coaching industry has been selling you for 30 years. You need a bulletproof plan before you quit. Save 6 months of expenses. Build your side hustle to 50% of your income first. Have 3 clients locked in, have a signed contract, have a business entity formed, have a mentor, have a roadmap, have a safety net under your safety net. It sounds responsible. It sounds like wisdom. Financial advisors repeat it. Business podcasts repeat it. Your LinkedIn feed is drowning in it. The version you hear most goes something like this. Never quit your job until your side income replaces your salary. That sentence has been shared millions of times. It's been turned into motivational graphics. It's been quoted in Forbes articles. And on the surface, it feels completely logical. Why would anyone argue against being prepared? Why would anyone advocate for chaos over structure? The myth is seductive precisely because it wears the costume of common sense. But common sense and truth are not always the same thing. The reason this myth has such staying power is that it is built on a real fear. The fear of financial ruin, the fear of looking stupid, the fear of proving your critics right. And those fears are completely valid. Nobody wants to be the cautionary tale at the family dinner table. Nobody wants to move back in with their parents at 34. So when someone hands you a checklist that promises to protect you from all of that, you grab it with both hands. There's also a survivorship bias problem buried inside this belief. You hear about the person who planned for 2 years, saved diligently, and launched successfully. That story gets celebrated. What you don't hear are the equally true stories of people who planned for 5 years, saved perfectly, and still failed within 6 months because the market shifted or their confidence had eroded so completely from years of waiting that they couldn't execute. Planning becomes procrastination dressed up in a business suit, and the system benefits from you staying employed. Your employer benefits, the economy benefits. The entire infrastructure around you is quietly incentivized to keep you exactly where you are. But here's where the story starts to fall apart. If the plan everything first approach is so reliable, why do 65% of small businesses that launched with detailed business plans still fail within the first 5 years according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics? Why did Reid Hoffman famously say that if you are not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you launch too late? Why did Sarah Blakely start Spanx with $5,000, no fashion industry experience, and a fax machine? Why did Steve Jobs get fired, start Next with uncertainty, fail publicly, and then return to build the most valuable company in human history? These aren't flukes. These aren't anomalies. There is a pattern here that the plan-first crowd conveniently ignores. The crack in the story is this. The plan doesn't create momentum. Momentum creates momentum. And you cannot generate real momentum while you're still clocking in and out for someone else's vision every single day. The plan gives you the illusion of progress while keeping you perfectly, comfortably, devastatingly still. A 2019 study published in the Strategic Management Journal analyzed 1,000 entrepreneurs over a 10-year period. Researchers at the University of Maryland found that entrepreneurs who quit their jobs to pursue their ventures full-time were 2.3 times more likely to succeed than those who maintained employment while building their business on the side. Why? Because full commitment forces resourcefulness. When there is no salary safety net, your brain enters a completely different operating mode. Psychologists call it implementation intention. When the stakes are existential, you stop theorizing and you start doing. You make calls you were too comfortable to make before. You send the cold email you kept putting off.
You say yes to the uncomfortable opportunity because no is no longer a financial option. In my own case, within 47 days of quitting with no plan, I had landed my first 2 freelance brand strategy clients, not because I was more talented after quitting, because I was more desperate. And desperation, when directed correctly, is one of the most powerful business fuels that exists. The research backs this up. Comfort is the enemy of urgency, and urgency is where businesses are actually built.
So what is actually going on here? The real explanation is that planning without pressure is just daydreaming with a spreadsheet. The most dangerous place to be as an aspiring entrepreneur is comfortable enough to keep dreaming, but never uncomfortable enough to start building. Quitting without a plan does not mean quitting without any awareness. I knew my skill set. I knew that brand strategy consulting existed as a market. I knew I could survive on less than $3,000 a month if I had to. What I didn't have was a client roster, a business name, or a formal strategy document. And it turns out those things are dramatically less important than the decision itself. The decision is the plan. The commitment is the structure. Once you are fully in, your entire psychology reorganizes around making it work. Every conversation becomes a potential opportunity. Every connection becomes a potential referral. Every problem you solve becomes a potential case study. The people who build real businesses don't do it because they had the perfect map. They do it because they got in the car and started driving and figured out the route while the engine was running. That is not recklessness. That is how almost every significant business in history was actually built. Here is what this means for you specifically. If you have been waiting for the right moment, the funded plan, the perfect runway, you may be engineering your own paralysis. Now, I am not telling you to quit your job tomorrow morning with zero awareness of your financial reality. What I am telling you is that the threshold for ready is much lower than the myth suggests. You need 3 things and only 3 things before you make the jump. First, a skill that someone will pay for, not a polished offer, just a skill. Second, a number, the exact minimum monthly amount you need to survive. And third, a hard deadline, not a soft goal, a hard deadline. Mine was 60 days. I told myself if I cannot generate $3,000 in revenue in 60 days, I will reassess. That was it. No elaborate business plan, no investor deck, no LLC formed on day 1. Now, at around the 7-minute mark of this journey, I want to be transparent with you about what actually kept me sane and on track during those chaotic first 90 days without a paycheck. 2 books were non-negotiable for me. Here is your single action step from this video. Do not skip this. Tonight, before you go to sleep, open a Notes app and answer 3 questions. Write down 1 skill you have right now that someone would pay for. Write down the exact dollar amount you need each month to cover rent, food, and basics. Write down a date, 60, 90, or 120 days from today, by which you will have generated your first dollar from that skill outside of your job. That is it. Not a business plan, not a pitch deck, not a logo. 3 answers, because the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not a planning gap. It is a decision gap, and decisions don't require perfect information. They require commitment. The boat is sitting on the shore right now. You have been studying the water for months, maybe years. At some point, you have to ask yourself, what exactly am I waiting for? And if you cannot answer that question with a specific logical reason, not a fear dressed up as logic, but an actual reason, then maybe the only thing standing between you and the version of your life you actually want is the match. If this video hit differently than you expected, drop a number in the comments, the exact dollar amount you would need monthly to quit your job and survive. Let's see how different everyone's number actually is. Subscribe if you want the real, unfiltered playbook on building something from nothing. No fluff, no fake guru energy, just what actually worked and what completely blew up in my face. Next week, I'm breaking down the 5 worst mistakes I made in my first 90 days as a full-time entrepreneur, including the one that almost ended everything at day 67. You will not want to miss that one. Disclaimer. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing constitutes professional advice of any kind.